What is up, Senders? Dr. J here. Today I want to talk about the Kona Process X. I've been aboard my custom Process X for about 10 months now, and I want to help you decide, is the X right for you and your riding style? Do you need the Process X in your stable? The Process X is actually the newest member in Kona's mountain bike lineup. New for 2021, the Process X came in hot with geometry numbers that most considered extreme, even by Kona standards. The X comes with a 63.5 degree head tube angle. That pairs really nicely with a 78 degree head tube angle. This size large comes in at a whopping 490 millimeters reach. The size medium comes in at a 465 mil reach. And one of the little geometry pearls that I think have not been talked about nearly enough about the X is that this is actually the first bike in Kona's lineup that actually came spec'd with a reduced offset fork. That pairs so well with that really slack head tube angle. And quickly, I want to go over the specifics of my custom build. You can actually check out my custom build video where you can see each part going on individually. But quickly, I have the Noble TR37 wheel set matched up with the DT Swiss 240 hubs. I have the SRAM GX Eagle carbon cranks. I have a 1-up 210 dropper post, which does work super well on this size large. You see here now I have a GX Eagle cassette. Most of the time I actually had the XX1 cassette on this bike. For the drivetrain, for the shifting components, I actually have the GX Axis kit on here. I've been running the 1-up carbon bars with a 35 rise. Really love those bars. Now I've had the opportunity to put the X in pretty much every mountain bike riding scenario possible. This thing has been on multiple trips to Snowshoe Bike Park. It has been to the Pisgah National Forest and the DuPont State Forest down in Brevard, and then it has seen a ton of action at Baker Creek in Knoxville, which, if you don't know, is one of the most awesome flow trail jump line setups in the Southeast. And then I've ridden it a ton of miles here locally, which we have just some really good single track, but also with a pretty progressive jump line. So let's get right into the ride impressions. I want to start with, how does the X perform on mellower trails? Perhaps you're considering the Process X. Your local trails aren't that hardcore, but you're just within a short drive of a bike park or some more hardcore or rougher riding. Can you get by with having the bigger travel bike so that you're well covered when you go to the bike park? And I do think the short answer is, for some people, yes. If you are going to spend a fair amount of time in more extreme terrain, and definitely if you're going to be spending time at the bike parks, you can still have a great time on the Process X on mellower trails. I'm proof of it because I've taken this on multiple 20-mile rides here at my local trails and have gotten along just fine. Long travel bikes in general have become so pedalable that you can get by with having a bigger travel bike, especially if your needs necessitate having that longer travel on bigger days. Now, one change that I really want to note that I made to the Process X to make this thing a little bit more rideable on the local trails is that I actually put the new wolf tooth angled headset on the Process X, and I did not make it slacker. I actually made it 1 degree steeper. One thing that I noticed on mellower trails, but even on steeper trails that had sharp switchbacks, because the head tube angle was so steep, it did feel a little bit like the front wheel was way out in front, and it sort of wandered a little bit, especially at my height, trying to make a size large work. And so putting that 1 degree angled headset brought the front wheel back just enough that it seemed like it made the corners much more natural feeling, much snappier, and definitely much more rideable for the local mellower trails. Interestingly, I ended up leaving that angled headset even for my trips to Snowshoe Bike Park, where there are a lot of quick switchbacks and sharp turns. There's certainly some steep riding there, and I never found myself wishing that I had the slacker head tube angle because I appreciated how much better the bike actually cornered with just a little bit taken off from that steep head tube angle. Let's talk about climbing. For reference, I am 155 pounds, about 160, 162 riding weight, and I spent a lot of time climbing the Process X. Again, this bike has been on multiple trips to North Carolina. If you've ever ridden in Pisgah, you know that you climb to descent. And a lot of reviewers have actually spoken on the fact that they felt like there was a lot of pedal bob and that they felt a lot of need to use the climb switch. And I'm gonna say that my experience was a little bit different, especially when running the air shock and even with the coil shock with this Super Deluxe Ultimate. It actually has low speed compression, which will help you take out a lot of the bob. The same applies for the Super Deluxe Ultimate Air. It has the low speed compression where you can actually help take out a lot of the pedal bob just by adding a few clicks of low speed compression. But with running this setup, I did find myself on just long fire road climbs or just long grind climbs, I would go ahead and use the lockout lever. Certainly, again, it does not feel the same as if you were climbing with a Kona Hey. If you're someone who likes to climb so that you can descend, you will find the benefit that you get and the capability of descending performance very worth tolerating the climbing manners of this bike. And especially if you spec your X with a lighter weight set of wheels like I did with these Noble TR37s, that to me is a lot of what you feel when you're trying to accelerate a bike, even if it's a bigger bike. And so with these wheels, I felt like the Process X, for its size, accelerated relatively well. Now let's talk about what probably most people have been waiting for, and that is the downhill performance of the Process X. I'm just gonna simply say I do not have a downhill race background. I've actually never even owned a downhill bike. And so if you look back to my initial build video, I made the statement that I was looking for a pedalable downhill bike.
It's exactly what I'm looking for in a bike, which is basically a pedalable downhill bike.
I'm gonna say that the X did not disappoint in that regard. This, a far cry away, is the most capable bike that I have ever owned. Plenty of progression in the rear suspension. And if you get a complete build, you're either gonna get a Fox 38 or a RockShox Zeb. And for me, that may have been one of the most noticeable improvements. Coming over from the Santa Cruz Mega Tower previously, which actually had a Fox 36, and then before that, I had a RockShox Lyric on my Santa Cruz High Tower. Both really nice forks, but this Zeb outshines both of those forks by leaps and bounds. The downhill capability of this Zeb to me was mind-blowing. My downhill riding on the Process X progressed by leaps and bounds over the last 10 months. I found myself going from being nervous about trips to Snowshoe Bike Park to looking forward to them because the X helped my confidence so much. And while I don't think the geometry numbers really hold you back nearly as much as you would think, on those milder trails or on climbing, I definitely think that they give you all of the benefit when you get this thing pointed downhill. And then having this super low standover on the Process X, both by being able to slam your dropper post, if you're like me, on a size large, it just gives you so much more confidence when you're going downhill. For me, this bike has a far cry away the lowest standover and the lowest perceived saddle height when slammed of any bike that I've owned, and that did wonders for me on my downhilling, and that is a good segue then into the playfulness of this bike. A lot of people want to know, is it so big that it just doesn't feel playful? That then relates to things to me like bunny hopping, manualing, and then jumping. Again, I had this thing down to Baker Creek in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is basically a bunch of big flow and jump trails. I had it there several times and had an absolute blast on this bike. Yes, you can perceive that it is a bigger bike, and yes, it does take a little bit more body English to sort of move the bike around, but not nearly as much as the numbers would dictate. I found this to be a very natural jumping bike. The X helped me progress those skills even more because there is a ton of forgiveness built in this bike. If you case a jump, it definitely has your back. Stepping up in capability has not seemed to hinder my jumping, but it has helped me progress it because I'm on a more capable bike. And so if that's where you're at on your journey, then I definitely think that you will benefit from sort of over traveling or getting a bike that's more than enough for your local trails, because it will help you progress in hitting drops, hitting jumps, because there's a lot of forgiveness built in the X. So this is actually goodbye for me for my Process X. No! 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 It has been my favorite bike that I have ever owned by far. But I'm gonna be getting on another long travel bike. We're actually getting a new bike brand here at Summer Cycle that I am super fired up about. I cannot wait to reveal it to you. Stay tuned for what that brand is and which long travel bike I'm going to be building up next. That is absolutely not a knock on the Process X. In fact, I could totally see myself circling back around to another Process X because I liked it so much. But I really appreciate you hanging with me to the end on this review video of the Process X. Again, I think that this is a better bike for more people than what many would have implied based on how aggressive it is. Still a really rideable bike, and so if you're looking for a super capable bike, definitely put it on your radar. Certainly, we would love to be able to build one of these up for you if you're on the market for one. So yeah, if you're in the area, come and check us out here at Summer Cycle or jump online at summercyclebikes.com. We'd love to chat with you about all things bike. As always, thanks for watching.